Drew, welcome to another episode of All Points Matter, dude.
We are back, man. How we doing?
I'm doing great, and I'm super excited because I think we're getting started here. I mean, it is the NFL season's over. We're in the dead period between the draft and free agency and all that stuff. So, what better to fill this time than with the introduction of something that where the people are just all winners because the USFL and the XFL merged. So we're getting the best of the best for off-season spring football. So we get to dive into this UFL league, and I couldn't be more excited.
Man, I'm in the same boat. Last season, USFL, XFL, we were feeling them out. Viewership was weird. People weren't used to spring football that was uncovidized, right? I mean, during COVID, they had it on ESPN Plus. People were probably watching it more often, but we haven't had spring football to this magnitude ever before. And I know The Rock is dedicated. I know Fox Sports is dedicated. And what is it, Danny Garcia? She's dedicated to this. And here at All Points Matter, we are going to be dedicated to this. This is going to be our thing for the spring. We're going to sprinkle in some baseball. We're going to sprinkle in some golf. We're going to sprinkle in some sports betting. But this is what we're going to really nail home this spring season, and we are more than excited to be jumping into this.
Yeah, we're in a really unique spot because now, I mean, the first time the XFL came around, they were the only league at the time. And I think they ran for 2 to 4 weeks before COVID shut them down. They had a fun run for like 2 weeks after everything else had been shut down. So that was when we were all watching, and it was really good football. It was highly competitive. There were good players. And then last year, all those leagues came back. So we had the XFL and we had the USFL. So the player pool, it's a fascinating thing because the NFL dominates, right? So if anybody gets a reserves or futures contract, they're more likely to take that and stay in the NFL. So that's a good chunk of the quality talent that's not like premier NFL players or 53-man roster or practice squad, but those are guys that are going to try to earn a spot through mini camp, and they're going to spend the offseason training with an NFL team with the hopes of making it. And so NFL rosters right now are in the ballpark of 90 guys. So 90 times 32 is whatever, but that's a huge talent pool. So then last year we had the XFL, which ran from February through April or something like that. And then the USFL ran after that. So if you talk about like the 90 best quarterbacks are in the NFL, arguably, give or take. And then the XFL had the next bunch because they were the next league, and those players would play in that league and then hope to earn a mini camp, training camp invite to an NFL roster. And then the USFL had the next pool of players. So the USFL really had, and now it didn't work exactly that way. There were pretty good players in the USFL that ended up playing in the league. There were really good XFL players that ended up playing in the league. But now we combine that talent pool, so we're maximizing. We're getting the best from the USFL. We're getting the best from the XFL to increase the viewer experience. And that's so I really think it. And then financially, this league is backed and invested. I really think this is the best chance for an off-season league to succeed, and we're in a really good spot.
I completely agree. I think this merger has done more for spring football than we could ever imagine. And I'm more than excited to dive into this. But today, Reese, we're going to go through each team. We're going to go through pros and cons of rooting for this team. We're going to go into the depth of player personnel. All right.
Sure.
So we're going to take a deep dive into the XFL. So this is your opportunity as a viewer to pick a team. One, this is your opportunity to learn some of these players that we maybe haven't seen since last spring, or from they were playing at Texas A&M Commerce or Incarnate Word, or who knows, Augustana College of Minnesota. We don't know, right? So we're kind of reintroducing these players. Who's going to be good? You're going to get some predictions from us, and at the end we will get my reveal of my XFL team because we know Reese is a loyal St. Louis Battlehawks fan.
Yeah, since the beginning, baby, since the inception. We're in.
Yeah, I was back and forth. I was a DC Defenders guy. We got boots on the ground there. Happy to see the videos of the beer snake, get friends on TV. It's exciting stuff, but was I really in it for the football? USFL, I was at Michigan Panthers. Didn't catch too many games. I have roots in Michigan. We'll see where we get to. Just two kind of teasers for you there. But before we jump in, last episode we kind of mentioned two new segments. We had our belligerent picks and our rowdy picks. We're just going to mention this. We put 2 minutes preparation into this. We did brief research for each of these picks, but we went 4 for 4. We had the over in the NBA All-Star game. In hindsight, easy pick. We had Niagara covering their spread against
Niagara +6. They won, baby.
Yeah, Niagara +6.
Didn't even know they existed. Of course they were going to cover.
Nope. And then we had Cornell over Harvard.
Yeah, that was Cornell -8.5 over Harvard, and 100-point difference in the RPI. Like, absolutely, Cornell was home. Hard to bet against the home team in college basketball, especially when they're 100-point favorites or 100-point RPI difference. So that was a no-brainer to me. Home run, and then bring it home through.
Dude, our belligerent pick of the week, President's Day off of work. We got to watch some Daytona 500 delayed from Sunday. We were going with a ballsy pick, I'll be honest. Joey Logano in the first pole position, leading the race for 45 laps. Head-to-head, I had Ty Gibbs over Joey Logano. It looked like Joey Logano was going to take this race the entire day. He was down in 30th. He crept back to first, second, third. He was back and forth, high side, low side, pitting at the right times. But Daytona, you never know what's going to happen. He gets spun. He gets hit. He's out. He's spinning. Ty Gibbs, he gets a little bump, but he continues to race. Ty Gibbs +115 to beat a Joey Logano -145. I thought that was a little skewed because Joey Logano was first pole position, where Ty Gibbs, I think, was 22nd in his qualifying position.
He sat in 20th the entire race.
Yeah, he was just hovering back there. I know it's a super speedway. This is a different kind of racing that people aren't used to. Maybe Ty Gibbs isn't as comfortable as a Joey Logano in these situations, but overall we pulled it out, went 4 for 4 on our first week with rowdy and belligerent picks. So we'll keep you updated on those. But without further ado, let's jump into our UFL debrief, introduction, deep dive, whatever you want to call this. Here we go. Let's go ahead and introduce the teams, just what teams there are, what teams we lost in each league, because I think that's important to notice because this is a merger, right, between USFL and the XFL to form the UFL. So, Reese, why don't you take us through that real quick?
Yeah, so it's an 8-team league, so we kept 4 brands from the XFL, 4 brands from the USFL. And, so teams we lost the Orlando Guardians, who were by far the worst team in the XFL last year. We lost the Seattle Dragons, a playoff team, a team that had a pretty good brand, but just didn't necessarily survive. And Las Vegas Vipers, they didn't get anybody to go to their games, and they weren't very good either, so they were pretty much an easy cut. The USFL, we kind of lost the Houston Gamblers, but they technically return as the rebranded to the XFL's Renegades. So it's kind of an interesting turn of events.
Roughnecks.
The Houston Roughnecks. The New Orleans Breakers are gone. The Philadelphia Stars are gone. The New Jersey Generals are gone. And the Pittsburgh Maulers are gone. So the teams that return are the Dallas Renegades or the Arlington Renegades, the DC Defenders, San Antonio Brahmas, that is the Rocks team, the St. Louis Battlehawks, the Birmingham Stallions, technically the Roughnecks return, the Showboats return, and Michigan's Panthers return.
Yeah, so we got quite the smattering of teams, pretty heavily focused on the East Coast and in the South. I was watching some YouTube earlier this week on their geography. We're missing a huge market out west, so maybe there's going to be some sort of expansion in this, but we're pretty focused on the East and the South. I know the South is a big football market, so I don't blame them. They have to go where markets are going to be valuable. We kind of tested the water with the Sea Dragons and the Vipers, and that didn't work out so well. So I think sticking to smaller markets that we know are going to be dedicated to football I think that's a good decision to start, right? Because you got to get your feet under you and start making some money. So
Absolutely.
we're going to start with our reigning XFL champions, your Arlington Renegades. These Renegades are coached by Bob Stoops. He's returning as the head coach, arguably the best coach in all of the XFL, in my opinion. He has maybe the best resume out of all the head coaches. Oklahoma, I think, is what he's best known for from 99 to 2016. Quite the tenure down there. Coached some unbelievable players. And then Luis Perez, he was traded from Vegas, correct?
Luis Perez, last year he played. That's a great question. I don't remember who he played for last
He
year.
was acquired at the trade deadline by the Renegades and was able to boost them to a playoff appearance and even the XFL championship. He finished with the fourth most passing yards in the XFL with just over 1,600 yards. And this gives Stoops' squad continuity without the lack of the most important position on the field, which other teams are struggling to find that consistency. So that's one thing. We're going to go through pros and cons of each team for rooting for these teams, for fandom of these teams. So this is something I'll probably go through. Reese can talk player personnel because this is player personnel is Reese's kind of expertise. But our pros for the Arlington Renegades, they have a great color combination. I feel like this light blue and red and black, this is kind of a hot color combo right now. People are attracted to it. People are more apt to go for good uniforms than bad uniforms. Texas loves football. That's another one. You can't go wrong with Texas football. And this is an easy bandwagon team. This is a pro you can jump on board. You're probably going to win some games. You're well coached. But I could also see that as a con. It's an easy bandwagon team. People might get on you for jumping on this bandwagon because it's such an easy bandwagon. So I could see that as a con as well. Another con, they're playing in an old baseball stadium. It's remodeled quite well, but being in an old baseball stadium, some of these in-person views might not be as good as a true football stadium would be.
Yeah, that's fair. You can't go wrong with good uniforms. And in terms of vibrant uniforms, that I'm going to be honest, I think the Battlehawks. I'm a Battlehawks fan through and through. All right, but I think they have the sharpest uniforms. I think the blue and the silver is sharp in terms of the most vibrant and the most appealing uniform. I think there's a valid point there. If you're just basing off of your team choice off the uniforms, this is a solid team to choose. And it also helps that they kind of won the XFL last year. So
Sure.
certainly helpful. And they're going to have a solid team to root for. Now, we got to remember they kind of backdoored their way into the playoffs last year. They were on a weaker division. The Battlehawks missed the playoffs and had a better record than the Renegades did. But however, the Renegades made it in because of their divisional standing or their conference standing. Then they got hot and won the championship. So in part, Bob Stoops, incredible football coach, very, very strong resume, as you stated earlier. They've got continuity at the quarterback position because Luis Perez will be back. They've also got a strong quarterback room. So Lindsey Scott is a quarterback from Incarnate Word. And there was one point, so it's small FCS football, but he at one point was in the running, or not exactly in the running, but in terms of the Heisman quarterbacks, he had similar statistics. So he had a loud college career there for a little bit, kind of wandered off the rest of the season. Part of that was just because he's at a smaller school, but a very successful college quarterback and multiple-time conference player of the week and those kinds of honors. So Lindsey Scott's probably going to be the backup, but they've also got Drew Plitt, a quarterback from Ball State, who was pretty successful in their run to the MAC championship. So they've got reasonable depth at the quarterback position, but they've also got an all XFL receiver, Deontay Burnett, who played his college football at USC, will be back. And then they've got Devontae Lambert, an all XFL defensive lineman, and Jake Lucina, an all USFL The offensive lineman will be playing for them this year. And then you cannot forget that Marquette King, a punter from Fort Valley State, one of the best punters in the National Football League for a stretch there in like 2016 through 2018. Him and Pat McAfee had an incredible run as the two top punters in the league by a mile. So Marquette King's got a strong leg. He brings a lot of fun antics to the league. So and this is a league where field position is going to matter, especially at the beginning as teams are still getting used to each other. Having that kind of special teams weapon is a pretty big deal. So they're going to have a pretty good team. And then they also bring back Drew Samia, an offensive lineman that Bob Stoops coached at Oklahoma. So they're going to have a solid offensive line. They're going to have leadership at the quarterback position and depth at the quarterback position. And they've got reasonable playmakers to work with. So they're not going to be the best roster in the national or in the United Football League, but they're going to be a pretty competitive team.
I love that breakdown. I think having a flashy player is going to be attractive to the UFL. It's different than the NFL. It's a different product. It's not as much of a staple as the NFL. So I think Marquette King could play a bigger role than a special teams player might play in normal NFL football for us. So it's going to be interesting to watch that. Transferring now, or whatever we want to call that, into our USFL champions of 2023, your Birmingham Stallions. Your head coach is Skip Holtz, son, I believe, of Lou Holtz, correct?
I actually don't know, but that would make a lot of sense.
I'm 95% sure Skip Holtz is the son of Lou Holtz. He's returning as the head coach of the Stallions. He's former Louisiana Tech head coach. They had a little run there where they were ranked 24, 25 there, but we saw him year after year make the AP top 25. So they have the reigning USFL MVP in Alex McHugh. He signed with the Green Bay Packers and spent the 2023 season as a member of their practice squad. That's a pretty solid quarterback room with Jordan Love up and coming, and just the remnants of Aaron Rodgers. He will not be returning to the roster, though, in the 2024 season because he is signing a futures contract with the Packers. So obviously that tie to the NFL is going to be a little bit more valuable than playing in the USFL. But you do have former Kansas State quarterback, I think he transferred from Nebraska, Adrian Martinez. He's projected as the day one starter. He helped the Wildcats get to a Big 12 title, electric player. He can throw the football. He can run the football, more than 2,800 passing yards and for more than 500 rushing yards with 27 total touchdowns in that season. So he's fun to watch, electric player, could be a great addition to the UFL. But Reese, we're going to get into our pros and cons here. The Birmingham Stallions, I couldn't find many pros for this team other than they're the reigning USFL champs. That's pretty much it. They're in Birmingham, Alabama. I don't know much about Birmingham, Alabama. I know it's the South. I know they love football. They love to say roll tide, I'm sure. So I'm sure they're going to enjoy watching this Birmingham Stallions team. But their uniform colors, they're pretty awful.
Yeah, the USFL did not brand their league very vibrantly. There's a polar opposite difference between the XFL branding and the USFL branding, and then you look and see which one was more valuable. The XFL was more valuable by far. So
for sure.
USFL kind of missed on that.
Right. I do have two more pros. Mine, it's kind of specific. Going back to Adrian Martinez, he's a dog. I'm excited to watch him play. He's going to be electric in the UFL. But there's also no professional team in Alabama. So there's a gap of football for a pro market. I know the Alabama football market is absolutely huge. Still red. So maybe that's going to attract some Alabamans for these UFL games. But why don't you go ahead and take us away with player personnel?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just want to touch on people might dog us for reviewing their uniform colors, but I'm not even kidding you. That that's like half of the decision-making process for a lot of people. It's either who the quarterback is or who has better uniform colors. That's who people are going to root for. So that's a real deal. But yeah, so at the time that we were reviewing this, Adrian Martinez did project as the day one starter or the week one starter for the Stallions, but they just recently picked up Matt Corral, who most recently spent time with the Carolina Panthers. He was a second or third round draft pick from them. He was a very, very highly recruited player. He played in the Elite 11 growing up, and then he went to Ole Miss. He played extremely well there, was in the ballpark of being a Heisman candidate while he was at Ole Miss, was a high draft pick for the Carolina Panthers. That didn't really work out. So now he's jumped on and most recently signed like just last week. So with the Stallions. So that's a pretty massive addition for them. So there will now be competition. Adrian Martinez is still expected to be the day one starter, but we could see potentially a 2-quarterback system there until they figure it out. So that'll actually be pretty fun to watch. So 2 solid quarterbacks on the roster there. And then not really any other quarterback prospects to keep an eye on for the Stallions, but they have 3 all-league players. So Chris Orr was a linebacker, was an all-USFL linebacker last year. Jay Sternberger, who is probably, in my opinion, the best tight end in the league. He was an all-USFL player last year. And then Calvin Ashley is an all-USFL offensive tackle. So they'll be returning. They've also got guys like Scooby Wright, Amari Rogers, and Deion Kane. So they've got 2 solid quarterbacks on their roster, and then they have 2 solid receivers. Deion Kane spent time. He was a very, very good player at Clemson, ended up being a 5th or 6th round pick to the Colts a couple years ago, and then played for the Steelers, played on their 53-man roster, not this most recent season, but 2 years ago. And he'll be in the USFL this year. And Amari Rogers spent time with the Green Bay Packers. So 2 Clemson receivers teaming back up. This seems to be probably not the best offensive unit, but between Sternberger, Deion Kane, and Amari Rogers and the quarterback play, they should be a fairly formidable offense.
And another thing I'm noticing, Bo Scarborough, was he LSU?
He was a Bama. He was a Bama guy.
Yes.
So he's a big, tough, physical runner. So he's going to be – he's like a poor man's LeGarrette Blount.
Yeah, so he went to Alabama. He's playing in Birmingham now. That could be an attraction to get people in the stadium watching UFL football. So that's something we can keep our eyes on, see how he performs down there where he went to college.
For sure. And then we talked about the special teams game with the Renegades, Marquette King. They do have one of the better kickers in the league, a massive leg. So Chris Blewett played for the Bears, Commanders, and the Browns in the NFL, and then he spent most recently the last USFL season with the Pittsburgh Maulers. So they got a big leg kicker, and hopefully he can be accurate. But, man, all they have to do is get in field goal range, which will be probably a little bit longer than most teams because Chris Blewett has one of the bigger legs. Obviously, accuracy was a problem. That's kind of why he's in this league. But the range is not going to be a question for Blewett.
I love it. I like these highlights of the special teams. It's going to play a big role in these games, especially if kickers aren't as accurate. It's going to be a fun game to watch. But
very true. Special teams matters, man.
There we go. The offense, defense, special teams. You got to win them all to win a game.
For sure.
So we're going to go ahead and move into our DC Defenders now. Housed in Washington, D.C. Logo represents and is similar to the D.C. flag, has a lot of history kind of sort of in their logo. The head coach here in D.C. is Reggie Barlow, returning as the Defenders head coach. His most recent non-XFL job was the Virginia State head coach, so maybe not the biggest program in the nation, but it is a program. Reese, why don't you tell us a little bit about the DC Defenders?
All right, so the Defenders are in a really interesting spot. So last year they had Jordan Teamu on their roster as the quarterback. Now, Jordan Teamu and Derek King were both really good players, but Teamu ended up being the XFL Offensive Player of the Year, and he was previously the quarterback of the Battlehawks, where he was a very, very strong quarterback for them. One of the reasons that they were a really good team right before that league was shut down because of COVID. So Teamu has been a really good quarterback throughout spring league football. However, he's currently a free agent. He's not currently on an NFL roster. He did not spend the season with an NFL team, so it's going to be interesting to see whether he's balancing retirement and moving on from football, or whether he's going to jump back onto this roster here right before the season. But they're in a decent spot at the quarterback position right now. DeAndre Francois is probably one of the bigger names on their roster. And if you remember, he's one of the more talented college quarterbacks, spent a lot of time at Florida State before injuries and some legal issues ended up ending that run. But he ended up playing at Hampton, and now he finds himself on the Defenders roster. So hopefully he can, hopefully that works out for him. But they don't have a big name quarterback on their roster, so we're hoping that gets worked out, or they're able to go get Teamu. Outside of that, they've done a really good job of retaining some of their players. So Liam Thorndale is one of the best guards. He was an All XFL player a year ago. David Bellamy is a defensive end from Georgia, who was a very good player for them. He was an All XFL player. Michael Joseph was an All XFL defensive back. And then two of the bigger, they also have Abram Smith, a really strong running back for them. He was an All XFL player last year, and Trent Harris was an All XFL linebacker who will be playing for the Defenders this year. But three really big names actually in their defensive backfield. So they have three of the more talented NFL players who are making their way and making their debuts in the XFL with the Defenders this year. So Garyon Conley best played his football with the Ohio State Buckeyes. DJ Swearinger played 110 NFL games, so he's a veteran player. Just looking to play some extra ball. He played 110 games with the Texans, Bucks, Cardinals, Commanders, and the Raiders and the Saints. So, and he was a Pro Bowl player while he was at it. So that's a huge addition for them. And then DeAndre Baker is reintroducing himself back in the football. There was an incident. There are some legal issues. He was a former first-round pick for the Giants, and then there's some legal issues when he was with Kansas City. Those charges were dropped. That ended up being a situation where it was something he wasn't even involved in. So kind of hate to see that happen to a player, but happy to see him make his way back, and hopefully he can play some good football for the Defenders. So they've got their biggest question is going to be that quarterback position, whether Francois is going to be that guy or not, but they have solid depth around him, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Look for this to be one of the best defensive units in the XFL this year.
I absolutely agree. Big time defensive front here, or overall defense here in the UFL. Last year they went 9-1 in the regular season, undefeated at home, dating back to 2020. So they play ball. They have one of the best home field advantages in the UFL. But I'm going to list our pros and cons for these because these are kind of included in that. The pro is obviously that unbelievable following and just atmosphere that we don't really see anywhere else in the UFL. Maybe St. Louis, but I don't think it's quite as rowdy as DC. They had a great season last year. We experienced beer snakes every game. We're going to have some live feed from that here coming up this season. And you said their backup quarterback King is gone too.
Yeah, he's not currently listed on the roster. I would imagine one of them's going to make their way back, but
right.
That's a pretty big hit.
Yeah, I liked their backup quarterback that he could run. I specifically remember the game at Vegas last year when it was raining. Teamu couldn't throw, couldn't get any time, so they put in their running quarterback and he tore it up. So that's something that I'll miss a little bit there. But
overall, Jalen McClendon is the only other quarterback on the roster who's most recently played his football at Baylor. But yeah, they're losing two elite quarterbacks at this level.
Yeah. So some of the cons of choosing the DC Defenders, you're bandwagoning. They made the playoffs. They are a really good team overall from top to bottom. They've got a lot of talent. They have notable players that are missing. They're gone. And DC already has the Commanders. Are they going to be footballed out? Are they sick of football in DC? Are they thankful that they have the Defenders because they're better than the Commanders? We don't know. So there's a lot of question marks when it comes to how invested people are going to be overall in the DC Defenders. And I know they have a great following, but that's in-person following. Are they going to gain a following outside of those that have attended football games there in DC? We'll see. We'll see. So let's jump down to a team down south, the Houston Roughnecks, which is really the Houston Gamblers, renamed or rebranded as the XFL brand, the Houston Roughnecks. The head coach here is going to be Curtis Johnson. He's a former head coach of the Houston Gamblers, which makes sense why he's with the Roughnecks now. His most recent NFL job was with the New Orleans Saints, but as the senior offensive line assistant / wide receivers coach. So kind of an interesting path, but getting a cool opportunity here in the XFL to be a head coach, maybe show some skills and see if he can get a different job. So the Gamblers rebranded, as we know, through the dispersal draft. They got a decent pool of players. They have the offensive player of the year in the USFL, Mark Thompson, two-time offensive line or defensive line D tackle, Toby Johnson, and the 2022 USFL defensive player of the year in Chris Odom. So they've got some names on this team. I'm not sure how far they will go, but they've got some guys that can play ball. So we're going to go through pros and cons, and Reese, I'll let you take personnel over on this one.
Yeah.
So some pros here again. Texas loves football. I think that's going to be pretty much the whole market here in the UFL. Texas loves football. They're all about it. They have the offensive player of the year from 2023. They have the defensive player of the year from 2022. And the oil industry in Texas, the Texas flag, this is all included in their branding. So I think people in Texas that are really passionate about being in Texas are going to flock to this team just because this reflects so much of the true history of Texas. But some of the cons of being a fan of the Roughnecks, they finished 5-5 last season. That's the Roughnecks, not the Gamblers. Their stadium changes. They were playing at one college, then they go to another college. So it's just back and forth here. They're playing on college campuses, which could be good. You get some college kids out there. It makes the time a little bit more fun. But you also have the Houston Texans. Are they footballed out? Or they got some extra games? They were in the divisional round of the playoffs this year. So is Houston footballed out? Are they going to look forward to watching their Astros here in the spring? I don't know. So that's just a lot of question marks of where the viewership is going to come from. But let's hear it, Reese.
Yeah. So first and foremost, this is a team that's certainly got a lot of talent returning because this is the Gamblers, remember, rebranding to the XFL's Roughnecks name. So they're going to bring in some good players. So a lot of players returning from that Gamblers roster, including all at USFL running back Mark Thompson, who was the player of the year for them last year. Adam Rodriguez, defensive end from Weber State, he'll be returning. Toby Johnson, Justin Hall, Paul Adams, Manny Bunch are the all USFL players returning to this team. So they're going to have some talent. Their biggest question by far is going to be their quarterback. They just recently re-signed Reed Sinnott, who played fairly well for one game. He's got a pretty lucrative, or not lucrative NFL career, but lengthy, bouncing around since he entered the league as an undrafted quarterback out of San Diego. He joined the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He kind of bounced around. He's played for the Bucs, the Dolphins, the Eagles, another stint with the Dolphins, played one game for the Brahmas last year. And then he has since he played a little bit with the Bengals this season, spent some time on their roster, went back to the Brahmas, was released, and now is sitting on the Roughnecks roster. So he's bounced around, but he hasn't gotten a chance to really play football. So he's expected to be the starter. Jared, I don't even know how to say his last name, but Jared Garantano from Washington State is looking to be their backup quarterback this year. So the quarterback, the play at the quarterback position is going to be pivotal for everybody in this league. But they do not have a proven spring league quarterback, but they certainly have a quarterback who's been privy to spending some time with some good quarterbacks, most recently Joe Burrow and the Battlehawks, AJ McCarron. So, yeah, he's going to almost make or break their season. You hate to say it that way, but they've got decent players around him, especially an all USFL receiver to throw the ball to, Justin Hall. So, yeah, that's going to make or break their year.
I love it. I love it. Good reflection there and seeing where they're at. So we're going from formerly Houston Gamblers, now the Houston Roughnecks, to another former USFL team, the Memphis Showboats. I like the brand. I like the colors. They're along the Mississippi River, kind of, sort of. So the Showboats is pretty cool. It's unique. We haven't seen anything like that. But they're coached by John DeFilippo.
Yes, sir.
I can't say that name very well. Too many I's, P's, and O's, but it's all right. He most recently coached the New Orleans Breakers in the USFL, got this Memphis Showboats job this year. He spent time with the Bears as a quarterback coach and a passing game coordinator, so he's got some good experience in the NFL, but that was with Matt Nagy. Not the best situation there, but also didn't have a very talented quarterback, so we'll see where they're at. But overall, some pros. There's no pro team in Memphis, so this is an awesome opportunity for this football to grow. I know they host the Liberty Bowl in Memphis each year, so football is accustomed to Memphis. There's a history for it. They've had an XFL team. They've had an AAF team, the Alliance of American Football. That's a throwback. And they also had a USFL team. So there's a history of football in Memphis, and I think it's looking forward here with the Showboats. They kind of have the underdog mentality too. They didn't have the best of seasons in the past, so this underdog mentality could kind of be big for the Showboats. It kind of a scrappy city overall, so I think that underdog mentality is something that could be fun to jump on with the Showboats. But some cons overall, they had the lowest points for in their division last year. So their offense just really isn't there. They're currently ranked 5th in the power rankings. I don't know how I feel about that. Could be slightly inflated because we really haven't seen these teams play. There's a lot of questions overall about these teams, so I don't really know how much I trust it. But 5th in the power rankings out of 8, that's lower half, and that can go either way with teams getting hot, teams getting cold. So I don't see them in the top 4. Definitely 5 would be pushing their limits a little bit. And then once again, Memphis, Tennessee, I've never been there, but from what I've heard, maybe they care about their football. I know there's a history of it, but there's still a lot up in the air. It's not a huge market, but maybe they can get people there just by having a team, having a consistency of it for years, and that could maybe start a good fan base similar to St. Louis. So
yeah, they got a lot of catching up to do if they're going to try to catch up to due to the Battlehawks or the Defenders. But they're a premier spring league market. I mean, they just keep getting teams, and hopefully they can get fans out there this year for the first time. So that would be awesome. Their quarterback position is not going to be another iffy one. They're looking at not exactly having the most talented roster. I mean, we could certainly be surprised with how things turn out, but they're only returning 2 all USFL players to their roster. Jaron Jones, a tackle. He's a Notre Dame guy, so obviously he's going to be a pretty good offensive lineman. We know how Notre Dame produces those guys. And DJ Daniel, a corner from who played his college ball at Georgia, he'll be returning and playing for them. Now they are returning a quarterback who was fairly successful last year. Case Cokus was 2nd in the USFL in passing. He played for the Philadelphia Stars. He was not the Showboats quarterback a year ago. That was Cole Kelly, who will be returning to this roster. But we would expect that I would expect Case Cokus to win this. He's got a lengthier NFL career, bouncing around from the Giants, the Broncos, the Vikings, the Raiders. He even played a year in the CFL with the Elks, and then he jumped to the Stars last year where he played extremely well, became 2nd in the league in passing there, and now he's going to be sitting on the Showboats roster. So there will certainly be a competition because Cole played for this team last year. And we can see a 2-quarterback system that a lot of leagues kind of head that way. But then they've got two big names on the roster. Vinny Papale, son of Vince Papale. So if you've ever seen the movie Invincible, this is his son. He will be playing for the Showboats this year. He's been a decorated spring league player himself. And then Alex Lindstrom, brother of NFL All-Pro, currently the best guard in the National Football League, Chris Lindstrom, is playing on this team. So hopefully Alex can add some stability to that offensive line, because you get a pretty solid interior offensive lineman combined with that with an all USFL tackle, and then you would assume that hopefully they can get at least one or two good more players on that roster. You protect your quarterback, and you got to, if you have a productive quarterback, you're going to be in a spot where you'll at least be in a situation where you can score points, and you score points, you're obviously going to be in a spot where you can win a game. So, yeah, it's going to be pretty interesting to see how this team fares. They're not going to be my pick to win this league, but they'll have a shot.
Absolutely. It's it. And that's the beauty of spring football. Things can go either way. It's going to be fun to watch.
We truly have not that much of an idea.
Right. But it's fun to speculate. We can look at some players and some talent and kind of make an educated guess. But once again, lots up in the air. Once you get them on the turf, it's a whole different ball game. So
for sure. And most of these guys haven't gotten a chance to play meaningful professional football. This is their first opportunity to do so. So we can see the guys that have had success or had success in other leagues, but then there's going to be so many guys that this is their first opportunity. They're guys that don't expect to get drafted, so they hop into this league. They're guys that didn't get drafted last year, spent a year training with these guys. Like, there's so much unknown to this league, and that's what makes it so exciting.
Completely agree. Speaking of exciting for you,
yes,
Louis Battlehawks are next. I'm going to let you take this because these are your guys, and you can get after it.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, let's jump in. So Anthony Beck is going to be coaching this team. He's been the coach ever since the inception of this organization. They are in a spot where they're returning a lot of their players from a year ago. So that's a huge pro for this team. AJ McCarron bit the biggest name. So he spent obviously the majority of the season backing up Joe Burrow. And then I'm totally blanking on their backup quarterback's name. Who played Jake Browning, who played extremely well. He played his college ball at Washington, played really well there. Obviously, gets thrown in and almost leads the Bengals to the playoffs. So AJ McCarron being an experienced guy in the National Football League with the Houston Texans. He was a superstar at Alabama, played for the Houston Texans, and then spent the last couple of years with the Cincinnati Bengals. Asked for his release, so he's a guy that wants to play football. He's a guy that loves the Battlehawks organization. So they're going to have some veteran leadership, and that's going to be one of the some of the best leadership in the UFL, in my personal opinion. They, on top of having probably, I mean, Jordan Tamla was the best quarterback last year in the XFL. AJ McCarron will probably slide in as the number 2 best and most experienced quarterback in the XFL. So that currently process of elimination, Talma's not in the league, so now they've arguably got the best quarterback in the league, and that's going to do a lot. If you've got quarterbacks, just like in the NFL, if you've got Joe Burrow, if you've got Patrick Mahomes, you have a shot to win every single week. It's going to be the same thing in the UFL with AJ McCarron. So that's a huge pro for this team. They also added the XFL Defensive Player of the Year, Pita Taumapenu. I have no idea how to say that name, but he's a dog on the edge. So being able to have him added to the defense is going to be huge. They're returning XFL Special Teams Player of the Year, Darius Shepard, and they're going to feature one of the best passing attacks, which we'll touch on here in a second. Unfortunately, so I was super excited that Max Borghi, who played for the Roughnecks a year ago, he was the XFL's Christian McCaffrey last year. He's, for whatever reason, he has announced that he will not be playing for the Battlehawks, as the Battlehawks held his rights. About a week ago, he decided that he was not going to do that. So we're not sure if he is going to sign a futures deal in the NFL or what that looks like for him. But hopefully something changes. We would love to have him back. So, and then on top of that, the St. Louis fans, I mean, they're selling out. They're getting 40,000 people in that dome. So they're filling an NFL stadium. They're filling an NFL stadium. And they're bringing the juice. So they led the league in attendance by a mile. Because the defenders, they're going to tout their attendance, and sure, we're going to have a friend who's got boots on the ground in that stadium. Sure, it's a soccer field. All right, it's a soccer field. The Battlehawks are selling out a former NFL stadium. That city loves football, and then if you think about it, they're almost the furthest west team in the XFL or in the UFL, and there's nobody further west. So that fan base is only going to be even bigger now. So let's all join the bandwagon. Let's root for a team that's going to win. And then on top of that, we've talked about how valuable uniforms are. The Renegades have bright and flashy uniforms. Let's face it. All right, the Battlehawks have the best uniforms, and it's not even close. They got the wings on the helmet, the silver helmet, the blue, silver, white, black, sharp color combination. It's one of the best in the league. All right, so let's not sleep on that. They're going to look pretty good. But let's touch on their roster. All right, they're going to look good, but they're also going to play good. They're going to play even better than they look. So they got the former XFL Defensive Player of the Year added to their roster. Peter Tamapenu played his college ball at Utah, so he's played big football ever since he's been playing in college. He's going to come and play for the best team in the UFL. Sweet. We've got AJ McCarron. We already touched on that. That's extremely valuable. Who's he going to be throwing the ball to? Some 3 all XFL players. Shakur Peterson, Hakeem Butler. Hakeem Butler was the best, most productive receiver in the UFL a year ago, and Darius Shepard made his all XFL. He was the XFL Special Teams Player of the Year. He'll return. He'll be playing receiver for him. So they've got the best quarterback. They got the 3 best receivers in the UFL. So they're going to be a really, really deep and high-scoring offense. And then they add one of the best edge rushers in the UFL to counteract that. So they're going to be in a good spot. They're going to be able to protect them. They got 2 all XFL offensive linemen, Steve Gonzalez and Mike Panasiuk is going to be returning to this roster. So yeah, they're in a really good spot. So they got the most fans, they got the best fans, they got the rowdiest fans, they got the coolest uniforms, they got the best quarterback, they got the 2 best receivers in the league. What else do you want if you want a team to root for? So quarterback goes a long way. And then they've also got players that they're going to be able to distribute that football to. So yeah.
I love it. Great breakdown there of your St. Louis Battlehawks.
Good call, baby. Are we going to call it? Don't spoil it now, actually. Don't spoil it now. I for the record, I do not know what team Drew is going to be cheering for. You guys are going to know as soon as I know.
My wife doesn't even know, and I've talked about it with her a few times.
Well, she's going to be a Battlehawks fan, right?
We'll see. But moving on to the Michigan Panthers after yours in St. Louis Battlehawks. Head coach Mike Nolan. He is a former head coach of the 49ers, so there's some experience for you. Was that when the 49ers were great? Not particularly. But he did have a job in Dallas as their defensive coordinator in 2020, so another valuable experience. And he's going to bring a lot of veteran leadership to this Michigan Panthers team. They're going to be looking to – I'm going to let Reese get into the personnel there in a second, but some pros and cons right now of the Michigan Panthers. If you're wanting to be a fan of this team, Michigan football overall right now is hot. University of Michigan, they won the national championship. The Detroit Lions are back. They won 2 playoff games. They almost beat the 49ers there at the end. So Michigan football is hot. They're going to have a lot of people potentially jumping on board to this. They have a former Michigan State University quarterback in Brian Lewerke. So maybe that's some added interest from those there in East Lansing. And they have a pretty decent-sized market. Detroit, Michigan overall, that's a loyal market. They're proud to be from Michigan overall. So interesting things there. Some cons, their colors. The USFL really, really missed on this one. This is maybe one of the worst
ones. Add this one to the list.
This is probably one of the worst. I'm hoping.
It really is, though, and the logo stinks.
Yeah, I think they could have done a lot better with the Panthers. There's already a lot of teams with the name Panthers, Carolina Panthers, Florida Panthers. So that we could be a little more unique, maybe something to tie it to Michigan a little bit more. I don't know, like the auto industry used to be in Detroit. I don't know. The Pistons are not a horse. They're based on the car, right? Like, I don't know. Just it's frustrating.
Figure it out. What we're saying.
We're saying figure it out.
Dwayne Johnson's in control. He had to, he's got to give the USFL a little bit. They've got it.
Absolutely. So their colors suck. They went 4-6 last year, didn't make the playoffs. And Reese, when's the last time you've seen a Panther in Michigan?
Never. The answer is never.
There is no Panthers in Michigan, according to the Department of Natural Resources in Michigan. So I don't see the reason to be named the Panthers.
I'm trying to figure out who even was responsible for branding these,
It's
Because
a great
yeah,
question.
it's an absolute joke.
Absolute joke show.
They kind of hit
So,
with the showboats though. I mean that sharp color combination, like they're not all misses.
right. Agreed. I agree. So, Reese, let's jump into some player personnel here for the Michigan Panthers.
Yeah. All right. Looks like the only name we get in the USFL ownership is Brian Wood. So Brian, you missed on this one, buddy.
Me?
All right, Dwayne Johnson, he's got a chance to fix this.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
I trust the Rock. All right, onto the roster though. So they're kind of in a rough spot. They've only got one returning All USFL player. That's Braylon Speaks, and that's a good one. He's a good edge rusher. He's got NFL experience and a pretty productive player in the National Football League for a short stint. Really productive player at Ole Miss though. So really productive college career. Obviously, really productive in the USFL, earning the All USFL honors. So he'll be back. He's the only all league player that they will be returning. And there's a lot of uncertainty at the quarterback position. However, they do have two quarterbacks with a pretty solid resume and fairly good experience. So Brian Lorkey, he's on the team mostly because they're trying to get some Michigan fandom. Being the former Michigan State guy, that's kind of how this whole roster dispersion thing kind of worked. But he had experience with the Patriots, the Giants, played for the Sea Dragons last year, and ended up on the Panthers last year as well. He'll be returning to the roster this year, so that's the guy. But we would assume that Danny Etling, we don't know, but we would assume that Danny Etling, former LSU quarterback, he played really well at LSU, ended up being drafted to the New England Patriots. He's also spent a lot of time on numerous teams. So the Falcons, Seahawks, Vikings. He's played in Canada, played for the Seahawks, Broncos, Packers, Jaguars, played again for the Packers. Not this season, but last season. Actually, last season and this season, spent a little bit of time. Obviously, he's no longer on the Packers. He's going to play quarterback for the Panthers. Hopefully this year, we would assume that he would be the starter. He's the more experienced and, generally speaking, more talented player. But yeah, outside of that, there's not a whole lot to talk about. Kai Nakua is a big name player. He's a defender. He'll play a defensive back for the Panthers. You probably think the name is fairly familiar. You're right. His younger brother, Puka Nakua, is the receiver for the Rams, who was, I think, second in running for Rookie of the Year this year in the National Football League. So really awesome, only behind C.J. Stroud, who he's going to be a very, 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 very good quarterback in the National Football League. Unfortunately, being a Colts fan, we'll have to play him twice a year. But that's beside the fact. So Puka's brother, Kai, is going to play safety. But two things that I will say. So Desmond Patton played for the Colts. Really, he just kind of got beat out in a fairly deep receiving room. He's a tall, long, and physical receiver. There was one game where he specifically had to step up in 2019. It was when Carson Wentz was the quarterback of the Colts. It was a Christmas Day game against the Arizona Cardinals. He ends up catching the game-winning touchdown in a game where he had to step up and play a massive role because I don't believe Michael Pittman played in that game. So he had to fill Pittman's role, ends up scoring the game-winning touchdown. So he's a tall, long, physical receiver. He's going to be a pretty solid player, I would imagine, for the Panthers. And Trey Quinn was Mr. Irrelevant in the 2018 NFL draft. He's a shifty slot receiver, kick returner, kind of like a Wes Welker, Julian Edelman type mold, played for the Commanders. He will be playing on the Michigan Panthers this year. So not a lot of star power. Again, this is probably going to be one of those teams that's going to have a lot of infiltrated new talent. So there's a lot of unknown on this team. So they could end up being pretty good. But if you're just judging them compared to a team like we just talked about, the Battlehawks, who's returning a lot of all-league players, they're not necessarily looking the strongest.
Okay. Good to know. That could help with my decision later. But let's transition into our final team. After this, we'll get some record predictions, and we'll get my reveal for what team I'm going to follow for this 2024 and continuing UFL season. So our San Antonio Brahmas, this is a returning team out of the XFL, coached by Wade Phillips. He probably has the most experience out of most of these coaches. He coached the Houston Roughnecks most recently. He's the former head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. That's probably where he's been most notably known of late. And his most recent NFL job was the LA Rams defensive coordinator from 2016 to 2018. So he's got the experience. He's got the leadership ability. The Roughnecks kind of played decent football. So we'll see where that goes. Some pros and cons. They signed Destroying. He's a very well-known YouTuber and influencer there on that roster now. So that's going to be a big name. That's going to get some draws down there in San Antonio. They have a lot of Big Ten and SEC players. We know from our experience watching college football, those are the two most competitive football conferences and can probably make a difference in the XFL because that competition is decently similar. Wade Phillips is another pro. He's got the experience. He's a great coach. And once again, just Texas football. People love football in Texas, and you can't go wrong. Some cons, though, they were 3-7 last year. Not very good. There's a lot of yellow in their uniforms. It's San Antonio. I get it. They want to be flashy. They want to avoid the sun, reflect the light. Doesn't matter. Maybe we're getting to the point where there's too many teams in Texas, Reese. There's 3 teams in Texas. You still have the Cowboys. You still have the Texans. You still have the Longhorns. There's a lot of football in Texas. There's spring high school practice. The attention's going to be elsewhere. I'm not sold on them. And most of all, this is the con that's just really kind of against me. I understand that it's The Rock. He likes this Brahma, but I don't know what a Brahma is. I looked it up because I didn't know what it was. It's a cow. It's just a grazing cow with horns, and they're tough, but maybe a different mascot. I like the colors, the San Antonio. There's a lot of history down there that you could kind of tie in, but I don't know if I like the Brahma's branding overall.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Now, of all the teams in Texas, I mean, I think the Renegades are a big one. I feel like they have to have a team in Houston, but this is the Rocks team, so I feel like they just, based on the process of elimination, like there was no viable candidate. So that's why they cut a team like the Seattle Dragons, because like you mentioned earlier, they don't have a team on the West Coast, and that's kind of a big deal. So yeah, they're in an interesting spot now. This is where it gets interesting because they were a pretty bad team a year ago. They were coached by Hines Ward. Hines Ward's not returning. So who do they get? They get one of the most experienced football coaches, not just in the UFL, but one of the most experienced football coaches ever, in Wade Phillips, the guy who's been a former head coach in a big brand in the state of Texas for the Dallas Cowboys. And then after that stint, he was one of the most sought after defensive coordinators before. I don't even know if he retired or if it was just like a general decision as to I guess we're not going to keep coaching football anymore. I don't know what the deal was as why he exactly left the league, but he's returned and now he's going to be the head coach of this team. It's kind of a massive change. And then if you look at the roster, they're actually kind of low. Their biggest question, like we talked about the value of the quarterback position, their biggest question is going to be at quarterback. So they have Chase Garbers and then Tom Flacco, brother of Joe Flacco, and then they have Quentin Dormady. So it's going to be a pretty significant Dormady was most recently the quarterback for the Orlando Guardians a year ago. So based on the roster shift, he ends up going to the Brahmas, and previously he was just a quarterback in Canada, played 2 years for the Alouettes. So Tom Flacco, he's also been a Canadian quarterback. He played for Saskatchewan and Ottawa for 2 years, and then he was, first of all, he ended up on the Roughnecks, and then he was released, and then the Brahmas went and signed him. And then Chase Garbers is probably the most notable name. He spent some time playing for the Raiders, and then now he's going to be on the Brahmas. So all quarterbacks are new to this roster. The only one with spring league experience is going to be Garbers, who played for the Guardians, who unfortunately happened to be the worst team a year ago. So that's going to be their biggest question. But the rest of the roster looks really, really good. They're in a spot right now where they're returning an all XFL player from the Guardians, Cody Latimer, also making a shift to the Brahmas. Alex Millette, one of the best centers in the XFL a year ago. Drew Beasley, a really good pass rusher, all XFL team last year. Jordan Williams, the linebacker, is on the all XFL team. And then you look at they've got a lot of guys with NFL experience making their debuts on this roster. Katie Cannon, a receiver from Baylor, he's going to be one of the fastest players in the league. And then he's got Texas roots, so that's going to hopefully transfers. Two former Steelers running backs, Anthony McFarland, a big physical runner, and Jalen Samuels, a speedy runner. Both played for the Steelers. They will be on this roster this year. Tease Tabor, he's an older guy. He's bounced around the NFL. I think he was picked up by the Colts as a drafted free agent, and then just kind of bounced around the league from there. TJ Vasher, a receiver from the Cowboys. I think he spent a little bit of time with the Colts as well. Just a big, long, speedy guy. Jordan Vesey. He was at one point the best receiver in college football. There was a lot of hype around Jordan Vesey when he was at Cal before he entered the league. Never really made it once he got into the league as he played for the Texans. Quincy Wilson. There's a lot of former Colts in this league, but Quincy Wilson was a second-round pick from Florida for the Colts, and it just didn't really work out. He spent time on the Colts and then went to the Jets, and it didn't really work out there either. But a guy with NFL experience, he's not going to be covering NFL receivers really in this league. And then Brad Wayne, we talk about the value of the special teams position. He's a very, very big leg punter, formerly of the Steelers and Giants. So if they can get the quarterback position right, they've got a lot of experience and talent around them. And then obviously one of the most successful and well-known coaches in all of football, let alone the XFL. So they've got really strong roots on this team.
I think the Brahmas could be a sleeper here in the UFL. But we're going to have to see how that plays out. That quarterback play is going to be Reese. Let's go through who's going to win the XFL conference this year.
That's a great question, and I really dislike the way that they set this league up, because now you got the XFL teams. It's going to be very similar to last year. So like the Renegades from in the less successful conference, that's how they were able to make the playoffs as a team with a losing record. And then you had three teams on the opposite division, the Dragons, the Defenders, and the Battlehawks, and the Battlehawks got cut out. And they were by far better from a record standpoint. So I think we're going to be in a similar spot here, because I do think that the Battlehawks are probably the best team in the league, and I think the Brahmas are probably the second best roster in the league, with obviously a pretty good coach. And then the Renegades are a team that won the league a year ago with another really successful coach and a strong roster as well. So I'm going to have to go with the Battlehawks, because they're just returning guys that have dominated spring football. They've got the best quarterback in the league. And they've got the best quarterback skill positions, and they've got two all-league offensive linemen. So they're going to be able to protect, they're going to be able to get after the quarterback, and they're going to be able to score points. So I think that's probably the most important thing. So I'm going to choose the Battlehawks. Obviously, I'm a Battlehawks fan, but I think from an unbiased perspective, if you just look at them on paper, they're by far better than everybody else. Yeah. So I think the Battlehawks are going to win that division. And then it's a massive question, like who's going to win the opposite side. I think the Roughnecks and the Stallions are the two teams that have the best chance, but I just don't love the Roughnecks at the quarterback position nearly as much as I like the Stallions. And I think the quarterback is what's going to make the difference here. So between Adrian Martinez and Matt Corral, even if they go with a 2-quarterback system, they've got two quarterbacks with a lot of experience who have a lot of talent. But quite frankly, with Deion Kane and Amari Rodgers, guys with NFL talent on the outside, or NFL experience on the outside, they're going to be in a pretty good spot. So they got quarterback. They've got two guys to throw it to. Bo Scarborough is a big physical running back, so hopefully he can bring his Alabama self back to the Stallions team. I just don't think there's a lot of competition. And quite certainly there's a lot of unknown on the USFL side as well, but I think the XFL side is going to be absolutely loaded, and I think it's going to take one team it's going to be a one-man show on the other side. I think it's going to be the Stallions. So I think it's Hawks and Stallions, and I've got to choose the Hawks.
Okay. I I really it's hard for me to root against a quarterback in AJ McCarron who balled out last year, was the number 2 quarterback. He made an NFL roster. He practiced all season with guys that are better than him, and that rubs off on you. So I think it's going to be Battlehawks Renegades
Mm.
uh, for the conference championship on the XFL side. The Battlehawks are going to take it, in my opinion, and get to that UFL championship game. They're going to be playing on the other side. I agree with you. It's going to be Stallions Roughnecks, but the Roughnecks quarterback who broke his foot last year, blanking on his name right now.
Reed Sinnott.
Yep, the Sinnott.
Actually, that was the Brown. He was the Browns quarterback, but yeah, he was the Browns quarterback a year ago. He's gonna be playing for the Roughnecks this year. I totally just got
Correct.
that screwed up, but
Correct.
yeah, you're on the right track.
Yeah, so I think he's going to be a bit of a sleeper coming back. He's hungry to play because he only got one game last year. So I think that could go a lot farther than we think for the Houston Roughnecks.
Absolutely.
So I'm going Battlehawks Roughnecks in the UFL championship game. Battlehawks win by 10, 15 points in that UFL championship just because the XFL side is so much more stacked in our opinion, in my opinion, than the USFL side.
For sure. Yeah,
So,
it's I wish they divvied it up a little bit different. I wish they did 2-2 because like the Defenders have no business being the worst team in the XFL conference, but like they're just the most unknown at the quarterback position. Now if Jordan Ta'amu comes back, it's a whole different ballgame. So
correct.
that'll be something to keep an eye on.
Correct. So looking forward to the season, obviously, and it does come time for my decision, the big reveal. I'm gonna narrow this down as we go. I'm gonna go ahead and eliminate the Birmingham Stallions. I do not feel very connected to them. I don't like their uniforms. I don't like the 49ers in the NFL. So the colors just gone. Just gone. That's out of there. All right. Next, the San Antonio Brahmas. I mentioned I don't like their branding. I don't like the yellow. They're gone. So we're down to 6 teams. Like I said, the DC Defenders were my XFL team last year. I'm going to leave them in for right now. Arlington Renegades, I like their colors. They're flashy. I like Bob Stoops, but they're going to be eliminated from this race as well. So remaining, we have the Defenders, the Roughnecks, the Showboats, the Battlehawks, and the Michigan Panthers. So we got 5 teams left. Memphis Showboats, I don't have any connection to Memphis. They're gone. I do love their branding. That blue and yellow is pretty nice. I hope they do something different with their uniforms. Maybe Under Armour can take those over and get a little nice touch up on those. But we'll see what The Rock is feeling with his Under Armour brand. So we're down to the Defenders, the Roughnecks, the Battlehawks, and the Panthers. I'm going to go ahead and eliminate the Houston Roughnecks. I have no affiliation with Houston. I don't particularly like the Astros. I do like CJ Stroud, but completely different reasons. I hate Ohio State. Just not feeling the Roughnecks very much. So we're going to be down to 3, the Defenders, the Panthers, and the Battlehawks. My loyalties lied or have been in Michigan for other sports. That might be changing. That might not be. But the DC Defenders, I don't feel very apt to go with them this season. I coach football for a red, black, and white school. I love the red and white color combos. But I just can't. I don't feel the connection. I don't have ownership or a piece in the puzzle. I couldn't get up and go to a game 4 or 5 hours away if I wanted to. That's going to make a difference. I want to experience the UFL. So we are down to the St. Louis Battlehawks and the Michigan Panthers. Like I said, I have roots in Michigan. I have family there. I love the Michigan Wolverines. I just celebrated a national championship in Michigan. But the St. Louis Battlehawks are also a fantastic UFL franchise. AJ McCarron's an incredible quarterback. They have arguably the best uniforms, the best fan base, the most entertaining fans in the UFL. So, man, this is a tough decision, Reese. You've done a good job convincing for the St. Louis Battlehawks, but I am going to have to go home to Michigan with the ugly color,
True.
with the brown and
True.
light blue.
Are you making this decision live?
I'm making this decision live right now to be a Michigan Panthers fan for this UFL season.
You picked the worst logo.
I did pick the worst logo.
Oh my gosh, Drew.
Reese, I don't think it's about logos. I think it's about allegiances.
Oh, Drew. I just literally told you the Battlehawks are going to win this whole thing.
Yeah, you did.
You told me the Battlehawks are going to win this whole thing.
Well, you're gonna be surprised when my Michigan Panthers are 5-5.
Oh man. Hey, I'm happy to hear it though.
Hey, but
I'm personally upset. I'm sorry. I totally just rained on the parade here. So I'm gonna give you the floor again. My heart's broken. I really thought we were gonna, root for the Battlehawks together, but it's cool. I'm gonna give you the floor again. Well, you can go cut the biggest promo. You got 2 minutes and 20 seconds. Whatever we can put in a Twitter clip right here. This is for you.
All right.
Cut a promo for the Panthers.
Michigan Panthers, they have some Michigan names that are going to be the reason why people like them. Michigan football is hot right now. People don't think it's going to be hot in the UFL, but we never know. There was a dispersal draft that they got more players and better players than last season. They didn't make the playoffs last season, which is a tough spot to be. But at the same time, it's a new season. It's a new league. We have the UFL or USFL coming into this league. USFL they don't have much talent, but I think this dispersal draft is going to be huge. We have a few all league players coming back. Danny Etling has a lot of experience, especially with the British Columbia Lions in 2021. I think that's a key piece. I just want to be international, make this an international league. That's a big reason as well. And I'm going to say Rookie of the Year, Kai Nakua. It's going to surprise you here. I'm Michigan Panthers. I'm not saying they're going to win it this year. I'm not saying that my team's allegiance is the most important thing, because all in all, with spring football, I want to enjoy football. I want to make some money wagering with my boy Reese. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. Reese, your Battlehawks are going to have a great season. And I have a history of watching a team. I don't like making a decision before I can watch the teams, but I did. So I'm going to have to stick with my word. But I usually get a feeling when I watch teams and I start to pull for them. So we'll see. I think the Michigan Panthers I always have a little bit of a pull towards, just because of the family heritage in Michigan.
Well, I'm happy for you. And on the bright side, they have two of the more experienced quarterbacks on that side. A lot of NFL experience on the Panthers. So between Lurkey and Etling, so that's going to be a pretty important part for them. So we'll see. They're going to be a massive unknown elsewhere. There's going to be a lot of young talent on that team, so that they could pull through.
A lot of question marks, but that's where we're at with the whole entire league. There's just a lot of question marks everywhere, and that's what we're going to enjoy figuring out. We're going to watch some quarterback battles. We're going to watch the USFL conference battle it out. We're going to watch the XFL conference battle it out. Two different sides that seem like they're outweighed, but we're going to see. I'm sure there's going to be some crazy upsets, some crazy plays. It's going to be good, exciting football. And I'm more than excited for kickoff on March 30th between the Renegades and the Stallions.
Yeah, a little over a month away. Just a little over.
And what is it? Oh,
it's
yeah.
February 21st, although we have an extra day in this month. So, gosh dang it, this has to be a leap year. But
it's coming quick. And I'm looking forward to it.
It's going to be a great season. it's just all the unknown, just trying to figure some of that out. And then obviously watching a team like the Battlehawks and the Brahmas both just feel like they're going to be pretty explosive and pretty fun teams to watch. So seeing really good football and then seeing some of these other teams just try to, find their footing. And then like the Renegades were 5-6 and then ended up winning the championship a year ago. So the opportunities are endless. There's going to be teams that struggle early and find their way late. There's just a lot going on. So, and then who knows? I mean, we still got a month of roster transactions and players making their way in and way out. So, we'll try to keep our fingers on top of that. But there's so much that can happen. This is going to be a really exciting league.
Absolutely, I completely agree. Reese, pleasure doing this with you. I'm super excited for this UFL season. I'm more excited than any spring football season I've really been looking forward to because there's been a lot of them. But this season, diving in, I'm really going to want to get into the nitty-gritty of it. And that's what you're going to get as viewers of All Points Matter, the nitty-gritty of the UFL. Make this your home for UFL content and insight. Reese Decker loves football. He is dedicated to player personnel information, where they're from, how they're doing. He knows the stats. He knows and can see. He was a former recruiter, so he knows talent. I love football. I love just watching it, learning it, and making money on sports wagering. So we're going to be invested for you as listeners and viewers of All Points Matter. Reese, pleasure doing business with you.
Same to you, Drew. It's been good.
Looking forward to next time. And as always, All Points Matter. Catch us on TikTok and Twitter, All Points Matter Pod at APM Reese and at APM Drew. We'll see you next time.